Today we're taking a deep dive into the WesAudio ngTubeComp, the next generation volume compressor with full plug-in control. I've had the unit for a couple of months, so I've been using it plenty when it comes to mixing and mastering. At its heart, the ngTubeComp is a true volume tube compressor. This compressor have been a favorite for ages. They are loved for the smooth musical compression and the ability to add character and tone to any recording. With the ngTubeComp, the tubes are always part of the signal path, even when there's no gain reduction happening. This clever design ensures that the warmth, the rich character of the tube coloration, along with the subtle harmonics and the analog tone, is always there. This makes the ngTubeComp not just a compressor, but also a dedicated tube coloration and saturation unit in a way. Here's how you can use the ngTubeComp for its color and saturation. This is a great way to drive the tubes, the transformers and the THD harder for coloration. Even in the green mode, increasing the input level will push the signal harder into the tubes, the transformers and the THD saturation stages, introducing more tube saturation and subtle harmonics. The input knob gives you a range of plus minus 15 dB, which is super handy for gain staging. This means you can adjust the input gain to get different levels of saturation. The dedicated tube saturation circuit, the tube parameter. The ngTubeComp has a special tube saturation stage built into the compression path. The tube parameter lets you tweak the gain staging into the volume compression tube. When you increase this value, you get more tube saturation and coloration, but there's the cool part. An adaptive internal circuit makes sure that increasing the drive into the tube through this control doesn't affect the overall compression amount. So you can dial in the saturation without messing the gain reduction. I think this is a really nice feature. Adjustable THD control, the total harmonic distortion. The THD knob lets you go from 0 in bypass and 100% saturation, and this allows you to subtly blend in harmonic content or really saturate your sound. You can use it even when you are not using compression. This gives you a lot of flexibility to add some character to your sound. Output transformers plus more tubes. We are talking about the red mode. When you turn on the red output stage, you are activating a second tube amplification stage right at the output. Then there's Carnhill transformers. The transformers in the ngTubeComp add a nice weight to the low end and a bit of warm in the mids, and just smooth out the transient enough to make things feel a bit more glued and musical without killing the details. I think that's really important. When you combine this extra tube amplification and transformers in the red mode, you get a sound that's bolder, bigger, heavier, rounder and warmer. You can pick whatever word you want because it really fits the sound of the ngTubeComp. After the tube amplification and the transformers, in the output path, there's the iron pad. It's a passive attenuation circuit that works in the red mode. It lets you push the tubes and the transformers, getting more saturation and character, and it also helps to keep the output levels in check so the next stages don't get overwhelmed. let's talk about the compression modes. The ngTubeComp has 3 different modes. We have feedback mode, and this is vintage, musical. The detector reads from the output, and that means the compression reacts a bit slower, resulting in a smooth retro style compression that works great on vocals, basses or full mixes. Feedforward mode is modern and faster. The detector reads from the input, so the compression reacts faster, and this is more precise, let's call it. Limit mode is a more aggressive setting with faster attack and higher ratio that can be used for more of a tight sound, and this is going to differ depending if it's paired with feedback or feedforward.
pământul, fără bani sau gânduri, avem doar o viață și atât. Cu tine aș vrea să înconjor pământul, doar noi doi și vântul, că mâine nu putem ști dacă vom mai fi. Jor pământul, fără bani sau gânduri, avem doar o viață și atât. Cu tine aș vrea să înconjor pământul, doar noi doi și vântul, că mâine nu putem ști dacă vom mai fi. Jor pământul, fără bani sau gânduri, avem doar o viață și atât. Cu tine aș vrea să înconjor pământul, doar noi doi și vântul, că mâine nu putem ști dacă vom mai fi. Jor pământul, fără bani sau gânduri, avem doar o viață și atât. Cu tine aș vrea să înconjor pământul, doar noi doi și vântul, că mâine nu putem ști dacă vom mai fi. Jor pământul, fără bani sau gânduri, avem doar o viață și atât. Cu tine aș vrea să înconjor pământul, doar noi doi și vântul, că mâine nu putem ști dacă vom mai fi.
The sidechain section. Now let's talk about the advanced sidechain section. We have a high pass filter, and this removes the low frequency content from the sidechain path from 20 Hz to 500 Hz. So the compressor is not reacting that much to the low end. We also have a high bell boost, and this boosts high frequencies in the sidechain signal from 2K to 20 kHz. This makes the compressor a bit more sensitive to the transient reach elements like vocals, cymbals, sibilance. This allows you to add a subtle dynamic control in the top end, making the music sound a bit more present and articulate, let's call it. A cool thing is that we have a sidechain listen mode. This lets you temporarily route the sidechain path to the output. This way you can hear exactly what the compressor is listening to. This makes it easier to tune the sidechain filters by ear. You can activate this mode by pressing the iron pad. We also have the mix knob that controls the blend between the compressed, wet and uncompressed dry signal. This allows you to use parallel compression so you can keep the transients and natural dynamics of the music while still adding body and control. The iron pad also offers mix compensation to make sure that the output levels are consistent when you are parallel processing. And last but not least, let's talk about the operational modes. We have dual mono mode. This mode processes both the left and the right channels with the same settings, but it keeps the sidechain detection separate. This can be used for transparent bass compression. It provides a natural stereo compression behavior with no stereo linking artifacts, making it ideal for mastering or material where stereo image integrity is critical. For instance, if you want to compress a full mix but you still want to allow the left and right sides to react slightly different, and this gives you a nice stereo image, but also is preventing the entire stereo image from shifting due to one loud transient. You can also use the ngTubeComp to process two individual mono tracks. You can have two different mono plugins instances connected to each channel independently. This is perfect for one channel processing the kick, one channel processing the snare, one channel processing the lead vocal, each with its own compression, saturation and other settings. The stereo mode is all about fully linking stereo compression. Both channels are processed with the same settings and share the same sidechain signal. All the controls are applied to both channels at the same time, so you get symmetrical dynamics and a balanced tone, let's call it. Mid-side MS mode. This mode transforms the stereo signal into mid and side components. This way you can process the space around the music separately. For example, you can tighten the center while softening the stereo width. This is especially useful for mastering and making your stereo sound a bit better. You can apply more aggressive compression to the mid channel to control the main vocal or bass, while applying lighter compression to the side channel to enhance the stereo elements like reverbs or wide guitars. Digital control, automation, and other features. One of the most impressive features is the seamless integration with digital control and recall. The ngTubeComp has a purely analog signal path, but you can control it with a plugin that supports all the common plugin standards like VST2, VST3, AU, and AX. You have precision and recall. You can precisely recall settings for sessions, so you don't have to waste time manually reconfiguring your hardware. You have automation capabilities. Every parameter on the compressor can be automated directly within your DAW, allowing you to make dynamic changes to settings over time. You also have enhanced creative potential because it opens up a whole new world of creative possibilities, allowing you to experiment in real time. Accessibility is another big thing. All features are fully accessible and adjustable from your workstation. This is important for me because, as you can see, I have the ngTubeComp behind me. When I want to touch it, I can touch it, but most of the time I am controlling it with the plugin. The ngTubeComp has USB and Ethernet ports for the digital management, but it's important to note that these ports are only for device control and management. Audio remains purely analog via XLR connections. We also have some internal memory features with ABC presets. These are 3 distinct settings configurations stored directly in the internal memory for quick access and comparison. We have 100 internal presets. If you don't want to use the plugin, there are 100 user-defined memory slots where you can save your settings, so you have a great deal of flexibility. There you have it, the ngTubeComp. Use it as a saturation box by driving the input, adding THD and tube saturation, driving the output with the iron pad. Can use it as a compressor with feedback, feedforward, and limit mode, all in dual mono, stereo, and mid-side with an amazing sidechain section. Add the digital control aspect and you have the best compressor I've ever used. It's versatile and it has a great sound.